Alright, 2016 Kodiak. Muddy. Anyways, I've been telling a few people I would do a how to adjust the valves video to help you guys out, save some money from giving it to your local Yamaha shop. So I'm going to walk you through the procedure doing it in a short little video. This is about how it usually looks when you take the plastic off, because you guys are hard on everything. This is one of my buddy's bikes, and he said he cleaned it extremely well. Just so you know. See how nasty it is with our intake. We'll see. Really nice and clean in there, though. That intake's working. Okay, I'm going to take some stuff apart, and I'll come back and add on a few more minutes to the video. We'll have to do it in a couple different segments. Be back. Okay, we're back with the cover off. I had to take it out and give it a bath. It was just too filthy. I didn't want to get a bunch of crud in there. Okay. So you got the 4 bolts there on the top, 8s. You got to take them off. That'll get you access to the cams. You got to get your footwell off so you can get in there and actually turn the crankshaft so you can set it to TDC. Flashlight. 19 millimeter on the crank nut. You got your inspection window. I think that was what, a 6 and a 10 if I remember right. I don't know if you can see in the picture window there. Right there, I can see it in my view. There's a line. You gotta line that line up to that line. Okay, that line will hit the top dead center of intake and exhaust stroke. The way you're gonna know it's gonna be the intake stroke is if your camshaft lobes up here are facing away from each other. So the point right here and the point over there, they're going to be away from each other. If you're on the wrong stroke, they're going to be facing each other. So intake cam, if it's sitting in the bike, let's see, like that. If it's that way, it's going to be on the right place. If it's that way, you got to roll it around one more time. Alright, before you take anything apart, you really want to see your position of your cams. So those 3 dots on the intake cam are what you're going to use to align it back up once you take timing off. There's 3 dots on the exhaust cam too, but the decomp is in the way, so that line. So you got a line, a dot, and a dot. Okay, I don't know if you can tell, I'm trying to line it up real straight in my video. See, I haven't taken it apart yet, and them dots right there are not parallel with the head. What's causing that? And you got to make sure you're on down here, right at top dead center. But if them lines, them dots are not real parallel with the head, then you run into timing chain stretch. So what's happening is this chain is stretching, so it's allowing this cam to rotate back just a little bit. If you don't pay attention to this in the beginning, you got a lot of stretch, it's possible you're going to put it a tooth off, which sometimes when the chain's so stretched out it almost helps, but not really. If you get to where it's much more worse than that, you're going to have to just tear down and put a cam chain on it. That's the only way to fix it correctly. The exhaust cam will kind of follow the same path. It'll have a little bit of misorientation, but you'll see it mostly just on the intake cam because it's back, and the distance right here of each one of these links stretches just a little bit, so then it pulls it up. And you can kind of see, I guess I got some tension on there, but see how the teeth isn't sitting in there really hard right there. They're just a little stretched. This is probably a chain I would replace if it was, you know, me personally, but you know, most of you guys are going to wing another 3,000 miles out of this thing and probably not break nothing, so we'll probably just go about doing it. So you got down here You're not really going to touch that again if you can help it. You know, you don't, once you take stuff apart, you don't want to rotate your crank coil. So probably remove that from there. You got your time and chain tensioner right here. So that's a 10 mil nut on that. I got a screwdriver that's real skinny, it's a flathead. If you tighten this up, and me doing this with two hands and holding the camera and slippery, it'll be kind of tricky, but you tighten that up and then this chain is going to get some slack. So then that's going to allow us to get the cams off and take that off up there. So I'm going to take a few more things apart and then come back and add to my video, but I don't want to get too much of it taken apart before. I guess it's important to make sure you clean it good, because I mean there was going to be junk falling down in the top of the motor. That's why I took it out and hosed it off. You got this is your AIS port vent that I talk about in my other videos. You can see where it goes up here now. The vent that was coming off up here on the top of the cover I took off, which is right here, that's your crankcase vent. So if you happen to take them off, don't mix them back up, because if you hook this one, you block this one, you know, block the one up here, and you run that back to there, you're gonna be in trouble. Okay, the one that comes on the top has to be unvented, or if you put our kit on over there. Alright, I'll shoot another video in a little bit. Okay, I just snatched the intake cam out of there. I think I forgot to show you guys my little chart, which, make sure you do this first. You don't want to have to put it back together to measure, but you need to measure your valve clearance before you take it apart, which I did. I just forgot to tell you about. So what I generally do is just make me, you know, a little diagram of the valves. We got 2 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves, and then, you know, just label them so you know which one's what. You have to measure this stuff ahead of time with feeler gauges. So let's see, I think the book calls for somewhere around, I think it's 4 to 8 on the intakes and 8 to 12 or 13 on the exhaust in thousandths of an inch. You know, there's a metric value too. I'm American, so I go by inches, which, you know, everything forward related is metric, but for some reason I like to do my valves in inches because it's easier for me. When you do it, I like my little index of valves, but you can get the things that are like a jackknife and you go up in there. When you do it, I wish I had showed you this before to measure them. You got to reach back in there, and we're going to imagine the camshafts on there, and you got to get between the bucket right here, this is the bucket, and the lobe of the cam. So when you're doing it, let's see what this cam looks like. So you got, this is your cam profile. I'm trying to video and look at stuff through the camera so it keeps going backwards. But this right here is the nose of the profile. This right here is called the base circle. Okay, so a base circle is just basically a circle. If you imagine this camshaft was a perfect circle, it would never open your valve. So this measurement right here is the lowest point that the lobe will touch the bucket. So, you know, that's from about, we'll just say this is, we'll say 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. That basically is just a perfect circle right there. So you, when we have it at top dead center, it's going to be in there kind of angled up just a little bit. So you want to run the feeler gauge in between this part right there. So it really doesn't matter where you measure it, if it was here, here, there, because it's a circle. The profile of the camshaft actually starts, I keep looking in the wrong spot, right there. That's where it starts to grow. This big nose right here is what's opening your valves. That's what letting in all the air and the gas and making some horsepower. You know, as little as it is right now, it's still, that's what makes a combustion motor work. So you have to measure it before you take it apart, otherwise you don't know what to change to fix it. And what I came up with was my intakes were tight. So tight Tight means you can't really fit 1 or 2 thousandths of a gauge in there. I mean, it gets so flimsy, it's like trying to push a piece of paper in there. It just flops around. When you, when you get a thicker material, like this is 6 thousandths, that's still pretty darn thin. But I mean, there's some rigidity there. You can do some poking. You get 1 or 2, it just flops over. 1 or 2 means it's going to start hard, idle hard, run hard. It isn't going to work good. So once you measure it, then you take it apart. We did what we did. We took my time chain tensioner loose, down there, tighten it up, and you pull it out. My exhaust valve's measured, I wrote them down, 0.010, so that's 10 thousandths of an inch, which is in spec. So we don't have to change that. So I'm not going to take that camshaft out. We're going to leave the exhaust in there. I've left the chain on it in its position, so I don't have to work so hard to line it back up, which is not hard, but I mean, it saves you a step. So don't think you got to take them all out, but you have to take everything loose. If you have to adjust one thing, you got to take the whole damn thing apart. It's a lot of work. What else we got? Okay, so this is your cap. This is what holds the cams in place. There's these little clips right here. They are very easy to lose. Okay, they sit in the groove right there of the cap, and then they sit in the groove of the bearing to make sure everything is lined up properly. Yamahas do this quite a bit. When you're pulling this cover off, it's one big piece, and you got a lot of shit that's coming loose. It's sitting right over top of that hole of the motor right there. Don't drop that shit down in there, or you're gonna be mad, because you're gonna have to do a lot more work. Don't lose it putting it back together. You need to know it's there when you're taking it apart, or you're gonna drop it, and you're gonna be pissed off. I promise. What else do we want to talk about? All right. Shimon bucket camshafts. All right. Notice. All right. That's a lobe. That's a lobe. That's what's opening your valve. That's basically a bearing right there. All right. It's a ground piece of metal. Okay. That's what supports the whole back of your camshaft. And it's in an aluminum head. And it's in an aluminum cap. There is no movable surface. The oil is the bearing. Alright, it's really tight there. For you guys that change your oil once a year, you're taking a piece of metal and rubbing it against a piece of metal. It's not good. You will wear shit out. That's why I say change your oil every 15 hours, because this stuff needs to get done. Because there's no bearings. It's not a dang 350 Chevy that's going to run forever. It's a dang four-wheeler. As soon as these caps right here, I've got too much stuff in my hand. As soon as these caps, you start to feel a lip on it across there, you can doctor them up about once with a porting tool and some sandpaper and some work. It's 2 hours of work. You don't change your oil again, or your oil pump chain falls off, or something else, and that gets smoked. You basically need a whole new head. That's $1,000. You can do a whole lot of oil changes for $1,000. So change your dang oil. You will be happy with me. Alright, so now, what's next? Alright, we got our measurements. We're not changing our exhaust. Intakes are tight. Alright, we're going to pull the buckets out. I guess I can do that while we're talking so you can see it. Need a magnet. We're going to pull one bucket out. There is a shim underneath it. It pretty much always stays stuck to the bottom of the bucket. Generally, I don't do this when I'm trying to record. Alright, so there is the shim. Okay, we need to find my feeler gauge. Calipers. Okay, this needs to be pretty accurate. We're going to put it all back together and measure again. I'm going to do this one-handed, left-handed. Yeah, I got to set the camera down. Alright. Okay, so we got the shim in there. Let's get it on inches. Okay, they're all zeroed out. So we got 0.0720, which is also basically a 180 shim profile. Most of the shims you're going to buy are going to be in metric, so a lot of times it's easier to bounce back to metric to see what shim you're close to. But if it's a 720 and it's tight, and this is how I quiz my guys, like, which way do we go? Do we need it tighter or looser? Okay, if it's tight, we need more room, so we need to make a smaller shim. Tight was probably 1/1000th would be my guess. It could be 0, it could have been -2. You know, when it's tight, you don't really know what you're working with. I'm going to say it's probably 1. So I'm going to add or subtract. We're going to try to target maybe 7/1000ths, 8/1000ths. So we're going to take 7 or 8 away from that. So we want a 7/12 or a 7/13 shim. So we need to go dig through our shim box and find a 7/13 shim and replace that with it. And then put it back on top of the... Alright, I got my shim. I had to come back and do a makeup video there. Here, I got the right shim. So we had a 720 before. Okay, 0.072. I said we got to go to a 0.712. Okay, that's only 800 thousandths. We need to go to a 0.06566 area. Okay, 7 or 8 thousandths. I was 1 digit off. It is after 5 o'clock, and I'm trying to hang out to shoot this video. So we got tens, hundreds, thousands. Okay, we need to move down to a 0.65. Alright, easy enough. I'll be back. Okay, we're back. I got it together. I actually had to reshim this a second time. You know, we moved it 6/7 thousandths and it was still tight when I got it back together. So apparently this thing was running with negative lash by a good bit, which is, I'm surprised it wasn't acting more stupid than it was. But when we got done, we got 5/6 thousandths lash. Alright, so you get your gauge. I have to do this without watching myself in the camera. Alright, you want to be able to stick it up in there under the lobe and just be able to feel it dragging back and forth. You get that on each side. You know, and don't forget to do the exhaust too, but those were actually still in spec, so I didn't ever have to take them out. A couple little tricks that I did. I happen to have a screwdriver that fit this where you don't need a buddy to hold it. You know, it's right there, square. That kind of held it pretty nice where I didn't have to have that extra hand. And when I got it really tight, you can actually take the intake cam in and out to change the buckets without having to even pull it off the chain, you know, so you don't have to fiddle with getting it in the right spot. Other things to watch for: if you got a bucket or a magnet, when you're pulling the buckets out underneath the camshaft, you need to make sure you got a strong magnet, because you can drop the shim, and the way they machine this head is the shim can fall down inside the spring, and man, if you get unlucky, it'll fall down in there and you're gonna have to take the dang head off to find it. So make sure you have a strong magnet, otherwise, you know, it might be a scavenger hunt, and that never turns out good. Other than that, we're gonna put it back together. You know, this is loose timing chain, but that's because we haven't let this go yet. Okay. Alright, so you got that tight. Check your marks. Make sure your mark down here is still good. Before you go to starting it up, rotate your motor over a couple of times. Just make sure everything is peachy. You ain't running something into something. When you do it by hand, you can still fix it. It doesn't do any damage. You do it with a starter, it gets running and hits something, then that's when bad shit happens. Counterclockwise, way you gotta rotate the motor. Okay. We'll go by our dots. They all look good. Get her flashlight. Okay. Peachy. Alright, we're gonna put it back together and see how it runs. Okay, it fired it back up. It idles way better now, so we're pretty solid. We're gonna throw it back together, hook everything back up. Negative lash, you gotta fix that, man. This thing has, well, like 3,000 miles on it. It's the first time it's had its valves adjusted. You know, it was probably due about 1,000 miles ago. It'll probably last another 1,500 miles, and we'll need a set of intake valves in this thing for too long, would be my guess. I don't know if anybody noticed, these are some of my new cams that I was working on. I was going to compare lobe profiles for you, but I didn't get to do that because I was trying to get my stuff done and go home and eat some supper. So I'll merge all these videos together. Hopefully it helps you guys get this job knocked out on your own. Later.